The origin of the Electoral College is not very well understood by most Americans. Many Americans and some political scientists, some historians, think that the reason we have the Electoral College is because the founders were afraid of the voters. And so the story that I learned in high school, and in fact learned in college many decades ago, was the founders at the Constitutional Convention were afraid that these crazy people would vote for just anybody, and so they wanted to narrow their choices by making them vote for electors who would be solid, smart, sophisticated men, always men at that time, and these men would then choose the president. The problem with that is there's almost no evidence to support this theory. One delegate, Elbridge Gerry of Massachusetts, complains that basically the Riff-Raff are voting and you can't trust them. Gerry ultimately refuses to sign the Constitution. Nobody else at the convention believes this. There are a couple of reasons for this. First, almost everybody at the Constitutional Convention had been elected to a multitude of offices throughout his life before he got to the Constitutional Convention. He knows the voters. He knows the people. He's thinking, in my state, the people aren't crazy. After all, they've elected me to a bunch of offices. They must be pretty shrewd voters. So I don't mistrust the people. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the right to vote was far more limited in those days than is today. The one exception, by the way, was Massachusetts, where you had universal adult male suffrage without regard to property or race or religion or anything else. So Gerry may have said, Elbridge Gerry from Massachusetts, he may have said, you know, oh, just everybody gets to vote in Massachusetts. But that's not true in other states. You had to have property requirements, you had to have other kinds of requirements. There were racial requirements in some states, not in others, by the way. Free blacks could vote in New York, in New Hampshire, in Massachusetts, in New Jersey, in Pennsylvania, and even in North Carolina, which emerges as a southern slave state. So the founders, the people at the Constitutional Convention, would have said, look, the riffraff isn't voting in my state. Here in New York, we have a $250 property requirement. You have to own something worth $250. In South Carolina, you had to not only own property, but you had to be the head of your household. So only substantial men are voting, propertied men, men who have a stake in the system, what we might say today, people who have skin in the game. And so the founders are not worried about the voters because the voters are kind of just like them. So if the founders aren't afraid of the voters, why do we have the Electoral College?